Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months. My mother's voice thundered through the phone, echoing through the sterile hospital room like a slap. I sat motionless, stunned, my phone trembling in my hands. It was Christmas Eve. I was in the emergency ward of Las Vegas Medical Center. My 2-year-old twins, Ethan and Emily, playing quietly with plastic toys in the corner. A nurse named Valerie was checking my vitals. The pain in my abdomen was unbearable, like someone twisting a blade deep inside me. But somehow, my mother's indifference hurt even more. My name is Natasha Wilson. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the afterthought in my own family. My younger sister, Jessica, was the shining star, the golden child who could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, could barely get my parents to babysit their only grandchildren while I faced emergency surgery for internal bleeding. The bleeding was related to complications following my husband's death just 6 months ago. I was terrified, alone, and desperate. When I finally reached out to my parents for help, after exhausting every other option, my father's words cut deeper than any scalpel ever could. You are becoming a real burden, Natasha. We are retired now. We deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems. A burden, that's what I was to them. Never mind that I'd been sending them $2,500 a month since they took early retirement 3 years ago. Never mind that I'd continued doing so after James died, even increasing the amount when they complained about inflation. I thought that was what family did, supported each other. How naive I was. Tears rolled silently down my cheeks as I stared at the hospital blanket. Valerie noticed. She squeezed my shoulder gently. My friend Olivia is a professional nanny. She used to work with children who have been through trauma. Let me call her, she offered, her voice warm with kindness. A stranger, yet more compassionate than my own parents. I looked at my children, so small, so innocent. They had already lost their father in a sudden car accident. And now, if this surgery went wrong, the thought was unbearable. Not just dying, but leaving them in the care of people who saw them as burdens. Yes, I whispered, my voice weak. Please call her. With those words, I began severing the toxic bonds that had held me prisoner my entire life. As I hung up, memories came flooding in of a childhood spent in the shadows. My college graduation barely acknowledged because Jessica had landed a role in a local commercial. My wedding dismissed as too far to travel. When Ethan and Emily were born, they visited once, complaining the babies were too fussy. James had understood. He knew the ache of disappointment, the pain of family that never shows up. We'll build our own family, he used to say, one that knows how to love. And we did. Until that night 6 months ago, when a drunk driver stole him from us. Even through grief and depression, I kept going, working, parenting, sending money to the very people who couldn't be bothered to care. But lying in that hospital bed, something shifted. A tiny flame sparked inside me, one I hadn't felt in years. Self-preservation. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Valerie had promised, gentle, capable, and instantly adored by the twins. As the hospital staff prepared me for surgery, I asked Valerie for my phone one last time. With trembling hands, I sent 2 messages. The first to my bank. I cancelled all future automatic transfers to my parents' account. The second to my parents. I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve more than being your afterthoughts. Do not contact me again. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, pain and fear battled in my chest, but beneath it all, I felt something new. Freedom. The surgery was successful, but my recovery was slow. I spent 5 days in the hospital, slipping in and out of consciousness. Olivia stayed with the twins during the day, took them home at night, and returned every morning. She was a blessing. One afternoon, more alert, I noticed my phone blinking, 27 missed calls, and dozens of texts from my parents and Jessica. As I scrolled through them, a pattern emerged: confusion, then fury, then panicked pleas about the mortgage. Not once did they ask how I was doing. Not once did they ask about the twins. The final message from my father read: "You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month. The tickets are non-refundable." Jessica's texts, however, were different, genuinely confused. "Mom and Dad told me you were having a minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" And suddenly, it all made sense. They'd lied to her, minimized my emergency so they could keep their concert plans. Still groggy, I told her the truth, every detail. Her reply came fast. "Oh my God, Natasha, I had no idea. They told me you were being dramatic about a routine checkup. I'm so sorry. I would have watched the twins if I'd known." I believed her. Jessica wasn't cruel, just conditioned to believe her needs always came first. Maybe now she'd begin to see the truth. By the time I was discharged, I had made several key decisions. First, I hired Olivia part-time to help with the twins during my recovery. Second, I contacted a lawyer and drafted a will naming a trusted friend, not my parents, as guardian if anything ever happened to me. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers. Jessica remained in limited contact for now. I needed time to see if she truly understood. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, choosing my children, and refusing to be anyone's afterthought ever again. The financial consequences of cutting ties with my parents were no small matter. For years, I'd been sending them $2,500 every month, nearly a third of my income as a freelance graphic designer. But with that burden lifted, I could finally afford proper childcare and even begin rebuilding the emergency fund that had been drained after James's death. That night, lying in my own bed for the first time since surgery, the twins asleep across the hall, I felt an unfamiliar cocktail of emotions. Guilt lingered, the kind drilled into me since childhood for putting myself first. Fear still shadowed me, whispering doubts about how I'd manage recovery and motherhood at the same time. But under all that, something new stirred, a fragile but growing sense of self-respect. My phone buzzed. It was Jessica. "I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. 2 weeks after surgery, I was slowly regaining strength. The incision still ached when I moved too quickly, but I was managing. Olivia, true to her word, had been a blessing, arriving every morning to help with the twins while I worked from home. My clients, surprisingly understanding, gave me the grace I needed to balance healing and work. Remote life, once isolating, now offered security. Jessica had visited twice, bringing homemade meals and spending time with the twins. Our conversations were cautious at first, careful and tentative. But one evening, as we watched the kids stack blocks, she said quietly, "They always made it seem like you were the one pulling away from the family. I never realized they were pushing you out." For the first time in years, I saw my sister not as the golden child, but as another victim of our parents' manipulation. I wasn't ready to fully trust her, not yet, but I appreciated the effort. Then came the knock I had half expected. Through the peephole, my parents. My mother clutched her designer purse like a life vest. My father's arms were crossed, his face wearing that same impatient scowl from my childhood. I opened the door just a sliver. What do you want? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Natasha, darling, we've been so worried. My mother cooed, tone syrupy sweet. You haven't answered our calls. We just wanted to check on you and the twins. We're fine, I said flatly. If that's all. It's not. My father cut in, nudging the door. We need to talk about this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called. We had to dip into our cruise fund just to cover the mortgage. I blinked. No, how are you? No, are you healing? Just money. I told you I'm done supporting you financially, I said, and I meant it. But sweetheart, my mother whined, her voice rising in pitch, we built our budget around your help. You promised. Promised, I repeated, stunned. I helped out of guilt, out of love, while you couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery. My father's mouth tightened. That's not fair. Fair, I snapped. The doctors told me I might not survive that surgery. You didn't even ask if I was okay. You chose Elton John over your own daughter's life. Silence. We made one mistake, my mother whispered, as if trying to cast herself as the victim. Are you really going to punish us like this? This isn't punishment, it's consequence, I said, surprisingly calm. I've spent my entire life trying to earn your support. And when I needed you most, you weren't there. We're your parents, my father snapped. And I'm a parent too, I said. I would never treat Ethan and Emily the way you've treated me. At that moment, Emily toddled into the hallway, clutching her stuffed giraffe. My mother immediately switched gears. There's my precious grandbaby, she sang, bending down. Grandma brought presents. But Emily looked to me, wary and confused. These were strangers to her. I think you should go, I said quietly. If I'm ever ready to talk, I will reach out. But the money, my father began, is no longer your concern, I said, closing the door gently. The next morning, they returned with reinforcements. My mother's sister, Aunt Patty, stood outside the door. Natasha, honey, please, she called through the door. Let's all be reasonable. My parents managed their finances for decades before I started helping, I replied, not opening the door. They chose early retirement knowing they couldn't afford it. We made those decisions because you promised to help. My mother's voice cracked. No, I offered to help temporarily. That became expected without my consent. I ended the conversation with a firm. I'm recovering from surgery and caring for 2 toddlers. This is over. That afternoon, my father sent a group email to our extended family, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who abandoned her parents in their time of need. No mention of the surgery, no mention of the twins, just dramatics and martyrdom. But the response was not what he expected. My cousin Michael replied, Uncle Robert, didn't you just buy a new boat last month? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond bracelet you showed off at Thanksgiving? Others chimed in. Some messaged me privately. Aunt Patty even called. I had no idea, she admitted. They told me it was just a minor procedure, that you were overreacting to get out of helping them financially. Jessica, now fully in my corner, helped me write a simple, factual reply to the family thread. I recently underwent emergency surgery with significant risk. My parents refused to watch my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I am now focusing on my recovery. That was it. No drama, no guilt, just truth. And for once, the truth was enough. Recovery was slow but steady. With the stress of financial obligations lifted, I could finally focus on healing and caring for my twins. And to my surprise, a wave of support followed. Cousin Michael's wife dropped off home-cooked meals. A second cousin, someone I barely remembered from childhood weddings, offered free part-time babysitting. Jessica began spending her weekends at my apartment. building a bond with her niece and nephew while helping me recuperate. The most unexpected lifeline came from Valerie, the nurse who had comforted me in the hospital. She connected me with a virtual support group for young widowed parents. Our first meeting was on Zoom, and for the first time since James's death, I felt genuinely seen, understood by people who had walked this same painful road. Meanwhile, my parents' financial situation deteriorated faster than anyone had anticipated. They had, in fact, been living far beyond their means, counting on my monthly $2,500 contributions to fund their lifestyle of cruises, designer handbags, and impulse purchases. Jessica discovered that they had even taken out a second mortgage a year ago just to buy the boat, assuming I'd continue subsidizing their primary mortgage indefinitely. They've been lying to everyone, Jessica said one evening, stunned after going over their accounts. They're not broke, just overspent. They'd be fine if they sold the boat and gave up the timeshare. Their voicemails and texts grew more frantic, but each message chipped away at the emotional grip they once had on me. I was building something real now, a support network rooted in love and mutual respect, not guilt and obligation. Then came the twist. 1 month after my surgery, Jessica called, her voice a mix of concern and frustration. They got a foreclosure notice, she said. They have 60 days to catch up on payments or they lose the house. What about their retirement savings? I asked, bouncing Emily on my knee while Ethan napped nearby. Mostly gone, Jessica sighed. They spent a chunk on the boat. And the rest, some sketchy investment scheme Dad's golf buddy pitched. They lost almost everything. Later that night, the desperation broke through in their messages. In the end, the story wrote itself. After learning the full truth, much of my extended family rallied around me. Even my father's sister, who had always taken his side in family disputes, called to offer support once she heard they refused to help during my surgery. Meanwhile, my own life had shifted dramatically. With the help of Diana from my support group, I found and bought a small 3-bedroom house in a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood. The mortgage was actually less than the rent I'd paid on my cramped apartment, and for the first time, Ethan and Emily had a backyard to play in. My side business, designing memorial websites, sparked by the tribute I'd made for James, was growing. I'd scaled back my regular design clients and focused more on the work that brought me meaning. Olivia still helped with childcare 3 days a week, and I'd rearranged my schedule to spend more time with the twins. But the biggest change wasn't financial or logistical. It was emotional. I had found a community. Neighbors brought casseroles when we moved in. My support group organized playdates. Jessica and I were no longer competing for our parents' affection. She had become my sister in every true sense of the word. Even Valerie, the nurse from the hospital, stopped by from time to time with her kids. I had lost my husband. I had cut ties with my parents. And yet, I felt less alone than ever before. 6 months after my surgery, a letter arrived, an actual handwritten letter from my mother. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was something I had never seen from her before, a sincere apology. I've had time to reflect, she wrote. Watching you build a life without our help forced me to confront some painful truths. I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't need me the way I had needed my own mother. But I see now you did need me, just not in the ways I was willing to be needed. She admitted they had failed me when I asked for help. And she didn't ask for money or forgiveness, only that I consider her apology. She explained they had restructured their finances. My father had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They sold the luxury items and were living modestly for the first time in decades. I showed the letter to Jessica, who was cautious. They've been talking about writing for weeks. Dad was against it. But I think he's starting to see things differently, especially after his heart scare last month. My breath caught. Heart scare? Just chest pains. High blood pressure. He's on medication now and actually following the doctor's orders. I think it shook him. I wasn't ready to respond immediately. I needed time. Time to sit with my feelings. Was this genuine remorse? Or another manipulation cloaked in humility? Had they truly changed or merely shifted tactics? That night, I dug through a box of old family photos. I hadn't looked at them since cutting ties. And behind every smiling face, I saw patterns I had once been too loyal or too naive to see. My parents had always performed the role of perfect family while quietly prioritizing their own wants over our actual needs. A year after my surgery, I agreed to meet them in a quiet cafe near my new home. When they walked in, I barely recognized them. My father seemed smaller somehow, his trademark confidence replaced with a quiet, humbled demeanor. My mother's designer clothes were gone, replaced with something simpler. The twins were with Jessica. I wasn't ready for a full family reunion. I needed space, control. We sat in silence until, unexpectedly, my father wept. I've been a terrible father, he said, his voice cracking, and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know, I see it now, how selfish we were. My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. We've been in therapy, she said. Jessica's idea. We resisted at first, but it's changed us. Or at least, it's starting to. I didn't offer forgiveness. I didn't make promises. Instead, I told them about the twins, shared a few photos. They listened without interrupting, without redirecting the conversation to themselves. For the first time, they simply listened. As we stood to leave, my father asked quietly, would it be possible, someday, to know our grandchildren? I looked at him, not with anger, but with clarity. That depends on your actions, not your words. I said, if you are truly committed to change, we can start small, supervised visits, maybe. But understand this, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother. Walking away, I didn't feel guilt, or rage, or obligation. I felt calm, steady. I was no longer the daughter chasing approval. I was a mother, fierce, grounded, and clear-eyed. Whether or not my parents had truly changed was still uncertain. But I had. And that was enough. Tools.